Hey, this is Izzy Dakota Jones, and welcome to the Art of Doing podcast 2021. And since I've last talked to you, there's been a pandemic going on, and yeah, interesting times we live in. Hope you're all safe and you're all doing okay. We're going to be talking today to a friend of mine who's a great bass player, all around really good musician, Kevin Swain. He's co-wrote some great songs and is playing in some really interesting and unique acts. And he has a great perspective on the music industry and being a musician himself. And we're going to ask him what it's like living in COVID-19 era and how he's doing and how he's coping with it as an artist and a musician. And we'll be talking to Kevin, and we'll get into it as soon as we can. And I'll be talking to Kevin in a few minutes, so hang around. This is Izzy Dakota Jones, and this is the Art of Doing podcast 2021. I'm talking to Kevin Swain. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great, Joe. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, so what's new in your world as far as music goes? Because I know we go back a long way. Christ, we go back a long way, don't we?
We do, and I think when we knew each other the most, when we were playing in a band together, we both were at that turning point of stopping doing top 40 and trying to do something with our lives, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember being on the road with you, and you were showing me some of the demo. I was listening to some of the demos you were doing, right? That was quite cool. And then you actually introduced me to Edwin, right? Edwin Copard, right?
Yeah, which me and you, like, I don't really know too many other people that are in my circle that went to him, but that's something that's still with me. I don't know about you, but I still do some of those exercises, and
Yeah.
it has influenced, me.
Yeah.
Sure.
It definitely. I think he was he was a good influence on a lot of us. I think.
Yeah, and it was such a all-encompassing singing teaching that it affects you in other ways.
Yeah.
I think about breathing properly just in regular life and stuff, and it was really cool.
Yeah, I know. I found that the same way. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. It's great that you turned me on to him. And just to ask you, so how long have you been playing music for, Kevin? Like, how long have you? When did you
Well,
start?
I just figured the other day I've been pro for 42 years.
Wow. Cool.
So it's like, I think about that, just especially now when you have time to reflect.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of musicians are afraid of that. But
Yeah.
42 years. So I still love music, but I'm a bit crusty too. Like my patience has kind of dwindled on some things. But
Yeah.
getting back to your question for this year. So when the year started, we had to get an album out for Thor so that he would have a product when he toured. So we rushed this album called Rising and released it the tail end of first in January. I guess we had it done. We had it in the can in January. We went down for the Metal Awards in LA, and so we all met up down in LA. Got to see Satriani and Steve Vai playing 10 feet in front of me, and it was really cool.
I bet,
and,
yeah.
And I mean, like the guy from Queensryche, the singer, and I ran into more people there I know I've been playing in Portland a lot over the last few years, and I knew
know.
more people there from Portland than I did Vancouver.
Yes, I know, and I knew you played. I forget the couple bars. I played a couple of same bars you did when I toured down that way. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, you've had maybe Doug Fir and stuff like that. The really cool bars in Portland.
Yes, there are so many cool bars in Portland. Yeah.
Yeah, so we went down anyway, and the album was in the can, but I didn't feel like the songs that I'd written on had enough time, it was too quick.
Right.
So I got really sick right before New Year's. Like I had some, and again, everybody thinks maybe they had COVID already, but I was knocked on my ass just before New Year's. So at the same time, I was at home trying to re-record all the parts to what would be a single for John, for Thor, and so I was, just half there, but I got all this stuff together, and I know a guy down in LA named Ronan Chris Murphy that worked with King Crimson and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool.
And he's a good friend of down right when we had that really bad blizzard. You know, John Thor, he barely got out of town. Like he almost couldn't fly out of Vancouver. We got down there, and I got down earlier, and I just got off the plane, got a rental car, and drove up north in California up to the mountains where Ronan lives.
Yeah.
And I got to mix the single with him, and then I came down and met everybody in you know, wherever in LA, and nice and warm. It was amazing for February, and got to see major icon players. You know, we're getting interviewed on the red carpet, and Carmen Appice is next to me, and Steve Piercy from Rat, and it was really awesome. And then we came back, and the album got released, and John went on tour, and my song went out as a single, and, you know, it did pretty well. At one point, there's even talk, I don't know whatever happened with it, that Alice Cooper and Bob Ezrin were actually looking at the song as a possible Alice Cooper song. I don't think that ever got too far. But so that comes out, he hit the tour, and I'd been really aware of this whole COVID thing, and he's out there in the thick of it. So John played Seattle, and Seattle was blowing up.
Yeah.
He did Kansas, which was okay. Then he got to LA, and he was at the Whiskey, and he didn't really want to go out and do the show, but the promoter kind of twisted his arm. So as far as I understand, anyway, he did the show. Next day, the Whiskey closes down. He goes to Vegas. The next day, Vegas closes down after his show. So he was like just into all the bridges burning, and he came back. And while he was doing that, I was re-recording the second single I wrote for the record, and that was cool because we had Dave Stone from Rainbow on there, and we were getting locked down as we were re-recording this. So, you know, the drums and the bass were done. The organ with Dave Stone was the last session that happened in that studio. I don't think there's been I think just recently the first clients come back to that studio, and then we started phoning in parts, you know, like I'd get a guitar player, two guitar players to throw in solos. Anthony from the Headpins played on it, and we're recording in our home studios and assembling via, you know, so that was interesting. It was my first lockdown recording thing, and we got that out, and then we did another single, a co-write I did. So I've had 3 singles out this year, and now, you know.
That's good. That's amazing. That's like, even though everything's been kind of going weird sideways, you've been able to keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they're coming out on a label from LA called Cleopatra, who I got to meet when I was in LA, and I had a meeting with them, and they're even having a look at Al Harlow right now because, you know, Prism did some stuff down there, and so, you know, it's just a real out and out wicked experience.
That's cool.
And the whole, yeah.
That's cool. So like that. So basically, you like now you got that bridge down to LA, because LA, from what, like, I was talking to my manager who's out of LA, and he was telling me like recently that the labels are all starting to come back to LA.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the one we're with, I don't know if you know Cleopatra, Deadline. They have, you know, they've got Angels on there. Angels back with them, and they've got, you know, Missing Persons, and the real eclectic thing. They've got a blues area, but where they came up as all the record companies were coming down, is they recognized streaming and digital media.
Yeah.
They were ahead of everybody, and I think that's the basis of why they exist. So they're a pretty cool company just for that. And, you know, when we were at the Metal Awards, the table was all the Cleopatra, Deadline execs. So I just get along with people, and at this point in my life, I'm not hard selling anybody. I mean, and in fact, when I mentioned Al Harlow to them, I said, you know, this isn't something I think would really work for you, but just, you know, sharing what I'm kind of doing and what I'm excited about. And they actually kind of pushed me to, no, let's look at this more, you know?
Yeah.
So that was cool. And we just got along as people. We just enjoyed hanging out. So basically now I just consider, you know, Ken down there as a friend, you know?
Right on. That is so cool.
John T. Thor is one of the, if you don't know Thor, he's at the tip of, you know, great human beings, like just an amazing friend.
Well, I knew Thor through, if you remember, Mike Filoni, right? Remember Mike Filoni?
Yes.
Yeah. I know Thor through Mike Filoni because Mike Filoni basically road managed Thor in the early days, right?
You know what? I didn't know that, and these things keep coming up. Like you know, Marty that died, the bass player, he died last year.
Yes.
So I knew Marty got his start basically
Yeah.
It's funny. CBGBs.
CBGBs, yeah.
He played there with Thor, and I didn't know. And Mike Root, I kind of forgot that he started out with them.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
It's interesting because like funny you say that. That's like that. I remember Mike actually told me about them going to New York and recording there and how they did everything, and he filled me all in on it and the shows that they did, right? And that's actually Mike was telling me a story that they were one night they went to that famous disco back in the 70s. Remember what was that?
Oh yeah, something 5 or something.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of it right this second. But anyways, they went there, and he said like in the bar, across the room from where they were sitting at tables where they were sitting was Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, and
wow.
and they said like. Club 54, that was it, right? Yeah, and
yeah, Club 54,
yeah. So they went. He said they went over and they talked to them. So
wow.
and so they got to know him. Then he ended up at a party with Thor and everybody. Art Garfunkel. I don't know. You can ask Thor about that. Art Garfunkel.
Yeah.
I know Mike did, and he said and they were sitting on a rooftop. And out in the balcony of his big apartment, and he said and the sirens were going off all night back then in New York, right? Because he says the city never
like now.
yeah, like now the city never sleeps, right? There's always something going on. So he told me that, he filled me in on that whole story, and then look at Mike. Then like 10, 15 years later, Mike's like working with the Rolling Stones, right?
Yeah, in the weird capacity. Is he like some kind of numbers guy, like accountant type of thing, or something?
He first became like road managing, and then he became Mick Jagger's personal accountant. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the privilege of being road managed by him for a short time because I did a tour opening for Colin James, and it was just the best of the best in Vancouver. A lot of guys that had come up from top 40 bands. Like I remember him mixing Trauma.
Yeah.
And so we had him, and we had B that was from Simon Chaos days, Andy's sister, and God, like Glenn Collette, all these really great people, and they were all on the same team.
Yeah.
So the guy doing your monitors was a killer front end. It was like military almost. I watched that stage go up in an arena, and everything was taken care of. It was almost Army precision. I was really impressed. But Mike, I've been impressed with him since I saw him in bars. But
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing with Thor. There's a lot of people kind of the respect Thor gets down in the States when we tour Europe. I haven't done Europe with him, but it's actually a lot more. He's not really that big home here, and a lot of people have disparaging thoughts about him and stuff, which I was on the fence myself. But Frank Soda, I don't know if you know Frank.
I do know Frank. Yeah.
Yeah. So Frank, again, one of the most amazing human beings you'll ever meet. Like just an incredible person, and he just eventually wanted me to work with Thor, and I, if Frank says it's good, then I trust him, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. Because I know Frank's got a good reputation with people. Like people, like you're saying, everybody I know knows Frank, likes Frank. Like there's, yeah. He's just that one of those type of people that you meet that you're not going to have a lot of problems with, right?
No, he's a good man. He's a good man. I mean, and we've been through the big stuff together. I was at his mom's memorial, and we've been through life together now. So it's that's one thing I like about my favorite thing about Vancouver is 42 years of playing here. I've distilled it down to there's about 20 people in my world that we probably take a bullet for each other, and and then that's the people I'm working with right now. So
yeah,
pretty good,
That's cool. And now, are you doing anything for your own stuff, or are you writing any? Are you writing for yourself, or just writing with other people, collaborating?
I usually, and this is the jaded part of me, I've got a suitcase full of songs I've written, and now I write because there's a reason. Like,
yeah.
I'm actually, our last single with John was called The Rut, and it was kind of a joke at the time. John just kind of came up with that, but I'm thinking that's my theme song right now. Like, after that big rush of, I came into the lockdown going, well, I'm a hermit at heart. I love this. I'm not playing jams and bar gigs, and I'm producing, and I'm going, just lot of the
Yeah,
my
yeah,
poetry.
yeah, yeah. You know what? I'm the same way because when this all went down, like I did so much writing. I mean,
Yeah,
and I that's all I did. I spent most of my time sitting and writing because otherwise I'd lose my sanity. Like I'd go
yeah, yeah,
crazy. And
yeah.
yeah, yeah. One good thing about this, you're getting your art on. That's for sure, right?
Yeah, and see, I was drying up, and actually, right now, John and I are working on a new song, and it's from another writer, and I basically don't even really want to work on. I want to work on stuff I wrote and everything, but I was really kind of in a rut, and the creativity I've had to unleash to kind of arrange this tune and get it to have a vision for it is
Hmm.
just now I'm going back up again, and I realize I have to do art, or I'm just not really fully alive.
Yes, yes, yeah. I'm the same way, or I'm not happy, right? That's the way
Yeah,
I.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I like to give the. I think I'm like you, where I like to give life to a song. Like to hear it back and hear what I'm doing. I usually because I have two of my own bands and I collaborate a lot with everybody. But the thing is, I like to collaborate, or I wouldn't be in a band.
yeah,
But the thing I like is I just like now I'm just focused in on what I can bring, like what my idea and what my vision of it is, right?
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
and I'm just feeling more stronger in that. You know what I mean? I go, oh, I mean, it took a long time, but now I'm at that point where I'm kind of going, hey, I really like what I'm doing here. It's, sometimes I'll play something back and I record and I go, oh, that just sucks. And then later I'll go, you know what? That's actually not bad at all, right? And then I
yeah.
play it for people in my band, and they go, that's really cool. Like, holy shit, when did you come up with that? And I just, well, it was in the zone, and it just seemed to happen, right?
I guess that's the two big downfalls. One, because Picasso basically said, you know, having good taste is your worst enemy.
Yeah,
I'm paraphrasing, but basically, don't second guess. Just do stuff. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and I have a lot of trouble with that. Where I don't have trouble, and I'm seeing the downfall, I think, of a lot of people in this business, is control. That you're trying to control something that's really coming from another realm. It's not your bank book. It's so. I'm getting production credits. Like I've produced 3 albums for Thor now, but a lot of my producing, and actually a real weird tie-in to when I first, when I was young, when I was 16 and 17, I recorded at Little Mountain with Barney Bentall. And
Yes, I remember
the
that.
producer, yeah, so the producer we had was Paul Rudolph from Hawkwind, who was the guy that actually replaced Lemmy in Hawkwind when they fired him. And he came in, and what he told us to do, because the beds were drums, bass, sort of Fender Rhodes kind of keyboards, and rhythm guitar. So we were in the loading dock, me and Barney and a guy named Doug McFetridge, and Jack was on the floor with the drums, and all Paul said is, I have nothing to tell you to do. Play it like you play it. Play it like you do in the clubs. Don't change the damn thing. Just play it. And we just played live, and to this day, I don't know if I've ever topped how cool that is. So now I'm in a situation, like right now, this song, last night, Lisa Freecroft, who is just a big part of my world, said, why don't you ask a singer we know, a singer that came real close to being a Sarah McLachlan backup singer, instead of the usual people you go to. And I just go, magic, you said it, let's do it. I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds cool. I send the keyboards to a keyboard player I play with. I may just take whatever he gives me. Like, first off, that's his first choice, because I'm not going to try to control it. And if something happens that I didn't expect, cool. And so I'm trying to produce by producing as little as possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point because it's almost that famous saying, sometimes less is more, right? And sometimes I get the same way. Like we're in, because I've done a lot of recording too. Like, so I work with Bill Buckingham a lot, right
Oh,
now.
I love that guy.
I
I
know.
have a history with him.
I know he's great, and so Bill knows where I'm at. I know where he's at, and so when I get somebody in the band, comes in, like one of the people I worked in the band was laying down something, and you know, Bill says, "You're overthinking it," and the person said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah, you are. You know, just play it like you feel it and hear it. Like, don't try to think about it, and don't try to lay something down that you think that it's going to sound right, you know." And that's the best way to do it, like you're saying, because then you get the surprise, right? You get to see where it comes from. It doesn't come from something in your head. It comes from somewhere else, right?
Yeah. Which almost gets to, I was talking to a friend of mine, it almost gets right up into the spiritual realm, like in the higher spiritual things. For your third eye to be open, you have to quiet your mind, like in meditation.
Exactly.
So, you know, so you're playing like a scientist, or you're playing from your soul. And there's a lot of scientists in this town that I just, you know, they're actually highly respected, but I would never phone for a session.
Exactly.
And then I've heard guys at jams that are musically almost ignorant, like they're almost idiot savant, like they don't know the basics of music, but they play from somewhere else, and I feel it.
Yeah.
And I would rather go to the trouble of fixing that than, you know, like making that fit and getting that heart and soul. And you know, the big boys know this. Like you know, in LA they kind of think differently. Those great English albums, they weren't thinking like we do, where it's, you know, just every little thing is fixed and perfect, and
Yeah.
you know, they were looking for vibe.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly, and exactly, and like, and that's the stuff you and I grew up on, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's where I'm looking for the vibe and the feeling of it, you know, and just like, I mean, you know, you could be picky and you want things to sound like 100%, but like, that sometimes that's too clinical. You know what I'm trying to say? You know,
Yeah.
you know, and I was like, when I was in LA last year, the year before, at this music conference for my manager, you know, one record person came up and they're saying, "Well, we really like your stuff, but you know, this is a little weird. This is a little. This girl sang a little flat here and a little sharp there." And you know, I'm looking, I'm going like, if you just like listened to the song and felt the song, quit complaining. Like, you know, like that's just like, that's a technical thing you can fix if you really want to fix it.
Yeah, it can be done. Yeah.
Yeah, why bother? I mean, that's the way the person felt it when they sang the line, right? You know.
Yeah. No, I know.
And Bill, and like when Bill recorded the girl singing the piece, you know, he didn't change it. He just said that's the way she is. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go in there and play the tools and make it picture perfect. You know, afterwards she said, "Well, why didn't you guys fix it?" Because, you know, I says,
Yeah.
"Well, why? You sang it that way." You know, like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a toss-up. You know, there's a lot of pitch correction that's happened on stuff that I've been putting out, but I mean, the real initial performance, and the fact that it's been years since we ever, like, if we go to a jam or we go play a show, we play the song, and then we decide if it was a good night, if the band was gelling, if that vibe was there, did we really nail it? And, you know, you take 10 shows and you go, okay, that third show, the way we played such and such a song, that was really cool. But then you go in the studio, and that completely is gone. You know, you maybe have a demo, and you might have a real drummer play. You might use Izzy drummer, and no one will know it. They'll think it was a real drummer, but there was no connection, and then that's sitting separate. And then I come in and play bass, and there's, you know, by the time that song's done, it's got no relation to how that band plays together. So I kind of, if I can, I'm really looking at doing some live off the floor recording in the studio, just getting back to that, you know.
You know, that's so cool. I know we've all, like, you know, go to where you can't do that. I did some of that with a friend of mine that I'm trying to remember his name, was my producer for a while, Tom Simcoe, Todd, right?
Oh, I've heard of him. He was in a band, wasn't he? A big sort of band at one
Yeah,
point?
yeah, he was. Todd wrote I'm trying to think of the name of the band. He had, what's her name is, I can't remember the name. He's going to...
Yeah, I think I worked with someone else from that band,
Yeah.
and I can't remember either. You know.
they're a great. They're a really good band. He was a great producer. He was a great indie producer, and you know, the thing was, Todd just went on feel, but we went to a couple of studios. Like he would say, instead of using all the technology, like you're saying, he a couple of times says, we're going to go to Lemon Loaf studio and we're going to set up, and you guys are going to play live off the floor, and I'm going to record the whole thing, and then if we need to do overdubs, we'll do overdubs, but I want to get the drums and the bass to have a live feel, you know. And we did. That's what we did. We did that, I think, maybe on 6 or 7 songs at least, you know. And you know, at first I was a little apprehensive about it, you know, to be quite frank. I was going, I don't know, how's this going to work out? Then we went and did it, and yeah, and I got what he was trying to say to me, because it was natural, right? You got the feel, the drums of the room and the band playing. You got the whole thing, right?
Yeah, and you have something that's not tangible. You can't actually show it physically on the mix, but you've got feel. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I've heard great songs. You know, there's the Mutt Lange approach, and there's been some great moments, and then there's the, you know, there's a guy named Richard Dakota here. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name in New York. That was famous for all those. You know, we recorded on Friday and put it out on Monday.
Yeah.
And I hear cool stuff in all of it. You know, like actually, probably I would lean more towards the raw type of thing, but you know, it's a great song's a great song. I've heard, you know, Nickelback stuff that I think is pretty darn good, you know, regardless of the, you know.
Regardless to all the stuff that all the bad press they get, I know. I mean, it's like you can say 1,000 things wrong about anybody, but you know, look at the amount of how can I put it? A volume of material they put out, like you know, and sure, not all of it's going to be good, and not everything they do I'm going to like, but you know. That's just the way it is. I mean, you know, I think I'm a bit like you. I actually I go for the song, right? I'm really glad, like when we were young, we were all listening to singles. You know what I mean? We had the 45s, and it was about the single. And then we went to the albums and the concept stuff. And I like all that. But
me too.
But I really like that we've gone back to the singles a lot.
Yeah, me too. No, that's dead on right, yeah.
You know, because I mean, I've seen more people that I talk to, like studio guys or producers, stuff like you. They say to me, you know, I'm so happy the bands are all going back to like just one song. You know, coming in and record and really making that one song the best they can do. Because
yeah, no, it's really cool. I mean, in England in the 60s and that's what your deal would be. You'd make a single, and if you made enough singles, eventually they'd give you an album. So you'd sink or swim, basically, on whether you had hits or not, and that was the be-all and end-all. And that works for me. Because basically I haven't had much success. I've had 2 songs on major labels before all the Thor stuff. And I wrote the choruses for both of them.
Right.
And they both, and then the only other thing is now I end up writing bridges because I find people have expended so much energy by the time they get lyrics and a chorus and a verse and a pre-chorus that they're not doing middle 8 bridges, you know, like what the Beatles were famous for. So either I write the chorus or I write the bridge generally these days. But,
yeah, and you know, and that's true. That's, you know, funny you say that. That's a very good point, Kevin. Like a lot of people don't put the bridges in, right, or can't find where they should be.
Yeah, or you can tell it was 5 seconds. Like Bryan Adams, who actually I'm growing more and more respect for as he's aging into a real artist. But I've heard some bridges by him that, like, I always used to think of him sort of as a tradesman. You know, like his songwriting was like tradesman. It was formula, and I'd find some of his bridges were just throwaways. You know, no attention had really been put into it. It was all the other parts. Now, having said that, actually, he's been coming up with stuff in the last few years where he's really made it. Did you know Adams in the day when he was a kid in town?
I did. Because here's the interesting story about him. So I remember when he was in Sweeney Todd, right?
Yeah.
And Bud Marr, right? Bud was in. I interviewed Bud a while back, and Bud and I talked about Sweeney Todd, and then the trip there, and then I remember Brian. Then he went on his own, Bryan Adams, and I remember Who I remember. Well, going back to Mike Filoni. Mike Filoni road managed Brian, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right after me, because I got to know Mike from Showbiz Kids because I was in Showbiz Kids. I replaced Sandra Lakes. That was where
Oh, I played with Sandra.
yeah, I replaced Sandra, and then
Yeah.
I was with Brian Rask and all those people, and then what happened after that? And Floney was with us. Then Floney would work with us, but he was also getting in with Brian. So I
Yeah.
actually and so Brian Rask actually got to do lights for Brian
Right.
on the side. So because we were in the studio at Blue Wave, and we were working with Brian Campbell, who is a great engineer, and
Yeah.
and Brian Campbell and Tom Lavin, and we were in the studio with them, and so we were playing the B bars back then, like the Nelson and all that, right, to make a little money on the side, and so we didn't need Mike to do sound because Mike was like, we just scrapped. We gave our PA to Mike, and Mike
Oh, yeah.
took our PA to Brian in the beginning, and lights, and then what we did is we just downgrade to a little PA and a few little lights when we wanted to play the little bars to make some pocket change while we were recording, and so that was what we were doing, and then Mike would go off and work with whoever, and then he first started working with Brian Adams. Yeah, and I actually really like Brian Adams' first stuff. Like really like
Me
it.
too. Me too. I love that first. And that album's kind of pitchy. Getting back to that thing.
Yeah.
Like if you listen, if he's got the raspy voice, it kind of hides. But that's way. He's actually pitchy on that, which actually isn't a problem for me whatsoever.
No, I know. I actually really like the feel of those songs. I think
Yeah, me too.
I think he had some. I saw him at a sound check at the Cave. Remember the Cave? And
Yeah.
I saw it because Mike was doing sound and Brian was doing lights, and
Yeah.
they let me in, and I sat at a sound check and watched Brian and everybody rehearse and stuff. And I think you remember a guy named Steve Weeks?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Steve.
he was in then, yeah. And Ross Hembling on drums at that point.
Yes.
And Ross is the guy that, this is the 6 degrees of separation. When I played with Sandra Lake, Ross Hembling was the drummer, so that there's a tie in there, too.
There's a tie in there too. Yeah, because
Paul Iverson was probably on bass, or Dave Reimer.
yeah, because I remember I had a little. And then I remember one time, Brian and I were asking I put a little cover band together. After Showbiz Kids were up and down. We'd be together, we'd break up. We'd be together, we'd break up. It was on and up and down. And so Brian and I put a little band together, and Steve Weeks played keyboards because Adams wasn't working. So
Yeah, that's cool. I'm on recordings with him, and again, weird 6 degrees of separation. I was in like a house band at the Nelson you're talking about.
Yeah.
And we were recording in the sister studio to Little Mountain, which is right behind there, pretty much. I can't even remember the name, but same company. And Steve Weeks was on keys, and it was us, and then when you get back to Bud Marr from Sweeney Todd, there was a music store called Iron Music on Granville.
I remember that.
So Bud would always hang around there, and I went in. This all really happened fast. Like I quit school, I would go in there, and he would treat me like one of the boys. I mean, I'm 15 years old, but he would treat me like just another musician, which was cool. And I said, I need a singer for my band, and he said, well, here's a number of a guy. Now I'm starting to wonder even if he was having me on a bit, but he gave me a number of a singer he'd worked with, and so I phoned him up, and it was Brian Adams.
Oh, wow.
I was 15 and Brian was 17, but he'd already actually got the deal with A&M and was recording the first single. Remember that "Let Me Take You Dancing" that they didn't even put on the album?
Yes.
So he said, here's where I'm at. He was super nice. We had a nice talk, and he said, I'm looking for a band to back me up, so I'd definitely be into checking you guys out. Well, I was ahead. I mean, it was the catch-22. How are you going to check us out when we don't have a singer?
Yeah.
So, and I just realized I was over my head there, so I didn't pursue it. But so I went back to that Iron Music thinking maybe I should just join a band as opposed to try to do something with this. And I got Barney Bental's number off the board. So, it was all coming out of there. But Adams, kept popping in. Like I'd be at a house party and he's dating the hostess and he comes in and breaks up with her while I'm...
Yeah. I've heard some.
Remember that?
I've heard some
We're all
interesting.
kinda
Yeah.
giggling in the corner. He comes and breaks up with the hostess as the party's
Well,
getting
I've heard some interesting stories. Brian is
Yeah,
pretty notorious for all kinds of interesting things like that. Oh yeah, yeah. Mike.
Al, he called up Al the other day, and he was in town at the warehouse, and Al went down and hung out with him, and unfortunately had tickets to this thing, so Al had a brief time with Brian. It could have been a lot longer, but he said it was totally awesome. And then Brian and more Jim Valance, I think. I don't know if Brian's heard the new Al Harlow stuff, but Jim has, and he's been really encouraging, because one of the songs on our new album is an Adams Harlow Jim Valance co-write.
I heard about that. That's what I heard about that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're
very
kind of, Brian Adams is, he went to school about half a mile from me as kids, and he just always keeps coming up. But I guess the thing is, now I'm really starting to like him as a writer, because I like some stuff that's come up over the, like, When You're Gone was awesome.
It's a good song. Very good pop song.
Yeah, I mean, that's a while back now. Cloud Number 9, and I was just listening to a Bob Rock interview, so I wanted to hear the record he'd done with Brian, and it was cool. But then it went on to another album he did that was really obscure covers, and I heard some really nice stuff on there too. Like, so even in the last few years, I'm really liking who he became.
Interesting. That's interesting.
And I mean, some of the old ones are iconic too. They've great songs, of course. Summer '69 and everything.
Yeah. I think like that they're iconic, and he that's where he got into the commercial side of stuff, right? I like it when he after the commercial side of it, like you're saying. I like it in the beginning. I like it after myself. If I would, But I mean that's just my taste, my own taste.
Well, you know what he was doing though, like with what we're talking about. Again, Weird 6 Degrees again. The first Barney Bentall record I made, the engineer was Ron Obvious.
Oh, okay.
And Ron became Brian's right-hand man, so every time Brian wanted a studio in his basement or whatever, Ron had to make it happen. So I think one of those albums, at least, Brian just had a portable recording studio as he toured around the world, and he was just recording in hotel rooms and stuff.
Very cool.
So, from Mutt Lange, which is like surgical precision, to loose, and it was the loose stuff that I think Cloud Number 9 might have come off of that. But yeah, so I don't know what. And actually, when I said he has weak bridges, not all the time. Like the bridge in Summer '69 is freaking awesome.
It is.
That's like key changing into a bridge.
Yeah.
That it's almost like they glued two pieces together. I imagine Jim had a big hand in that, because I know the lyrics to Summer '69 are actually Jim Valance's story, because in '69, Brian Adams was 9.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, a little bit of a throw there.
Yeah, it's from what I understand, it's Jim's lyrics. So
yeah, that makes sense, right? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, that's neat. I mean, like those stories are. It's interesting, like when we're talking about the scene here in Vancouver, right? I mean, it's very interesting how like all these people we know and where they developed and stuff, right? It's an interesting thing, right? And it's amazing that there's a lot of people still doing it too.
It is, and I mean, a lot of my friends, I don't know if you're noticing the exodus, but musicians are starting to move out of Vancouver. So there's players I'd like to play with, but they're on the island, or they're up in, like Ray Roper's moved to Peachland now.
Oh, he did,
Again,
Yeah.
We can do things over the phone, like, he did backups on actually all my songs this year, pretty much. But he again, I just let him do it and send it to me, and I just go with what he sent me. So
yeah.
So good. Yeah, but a lot of these guys are leaving. There's great players. There's a lot of great players on the island. It's going to be hard. I mean, the thing is, though, if you're doing anything big enough, then you don't have to live in the same town. Like Prism, they don't live in the same town.
No, everybody's all over the place, from what I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually, we have a song on the album called "Meet Me in the Sky," which is kind of about that, about how basically they have their reunions in midair.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so I like the bigger stuff, like say for Thor, we got a over the world. We have players all over the world. That's why, I might be on a tour, I might not. It depends on. John's not going to get upset about it either way. We just sort of see which way the wind blows, and there's players everywhere, and you don't rely on like Vancouver's music scene or Vancouver's economy or anything.
Yeah, exactly. Because and plus the Vancouver music scene is, like when I interview people down the States, or I interview different people, over in Europe and stuff, they always ask them what it's like here, and I always tell them this: the music scene is up and down like a yo-yo here. It always has been. I mean, ever since we were kids. It's it comes in. It's there for a while and then it dies down. It's not like you go to Seattle where the scene hasn't really changed. The scene is very strong. And
so only what is it? 3? Like, I mean, if we didn't have a border, we could drive to Seattle in 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours, yeah. And I used to do a lot of shows in Seattle, not so much now. I mean, when I just with COVID, but in the last few years, I haven't gone to Seattle as much. It's tougher, yes. There's less rooms, and so then there's more acts. So for an independent act from Vancouver, independent recording act to get into Seattle, it's a little bit more tougher, than before.
Yeah.
But when I used to go all the time, I got to know all the clubs, right? And then I got to know everybody and the bookers and the interesting about a place like Seattle, like we're getting bands from I don't know, like not Oregon, but say you're getting a band from, you're playing at this bar in Seattle, and you got a band from Utah. And then you're getting a band from just came across all the way from New York, right? And they're on tour and they're playing the same place you're playing. You're going like, holy shit, and you get to talk to these people, and you get to talk to them what their music, where they grew up, and what the music was like for where they were, right? It's really interesting stuff.
And then it comes into your music because you experienced it,
Yeah, it comes into the vibe, the whole vibe. Yeah, exactly.
We had a band open for us in a place in Brooklyn. I joined a tour in Brooklyn, like my first night. It was hilarious. It's a really cool bar. St. Vitus, it's called. It's in Brooklyn. And I think we had 2 opening acts, but one band was called Python, which was funny because that almost was Spinal Tap-ish to me, right?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So I didn't know what to expect, and they came out, and that was the most honest band, that's not famous. Well, I guess just the most honest band I've ever seen. I could tell that they compromised not at all and were starving for it and were completely legitimately doing exactly what they wanted to do. And it was this kind of gut punch of, it made me feel dirty,
Yeah.
The honesty of this band, and it was tremendous. And it was just so, it wasn't controlled. The bass player turned up, and I went, holy smokes, there's no way that loud of a bass is going to work. That's ridiculous. But his tone was so good, and everything came together, and it was musically perfect.
Wow.
And so that changed me. If I was just sitting at home, so the one thing, as much as I'm reluctant to come out of my bunker, touring and playing with other bands, and I think that's why, in the 70s and stuff, when you were doing 5 bands on a show and they were all pretty kick-ass, and you're coming up, and then you're gonna, you want to watch The Who or Led Zeppelin and just get your ass kicked and either go home and quit or just up your game, But I mean, so everybody's up in their game because of their environment, and you don't. There's not I don't know if there's any, but there's not a lot of songs that are hitting that mark these days. I mean, I look hard because I love the high of new music I've never heard before that's awesome.
Yes, I listen to, the thing is, I listen to, I don't really listen to radio much, but I watch, there's a video channel that I watch called Loud, right? And so I'll watch that for new bands. You know what I mean? And so I like to hear what the new band's songs, what they're writing, what they're selling. And some, every now and then, there's a band or a song that comes out that that they're doing something different, right? I mean, they're not. The song is different. There's something sonically something different with the song uniquely. It may sound like your typical heavy rock song or something, but there's sonically something there that they're doing that's different from everybody else, and so and that's what piques my interest. So like, because then I'm always thinking, oh, what can I do, right? That's different, right? I mean, like I started listening to like, and people go, like one of the people in my band, one of the young girls in my band, she goes, I says, oh, what do you got in the car? I says, oh, I'm listening to Rammstein, and she goes, well, they're old as hell, right? And I says, yeah, but I'm just rediscovering these guys, right? I says, I just watched like 4 videos, and what they do is friggin' fucking amazing. Like
yeah, and talk about production values too. I've been listening to them going, John, can we get sounds like this? How do you do that?
Yeah, no shit.
It's awesome.
I know that.
I feel old now too because I think of those guys as a new band.
I know. And funny you say production value. When I listen to a band like that, like I told Kent, I says, Kent, fuck these guys. Fucking the production is just unreal. And I says, I can't believe that these guys, like can pull this shit off. And he goes, I know. And in the videos, like I'm not, not talking about the videos too much, but like the videos are like mini movies. And I'm going like, these guys got a lot of money. They're sinking a lot of money into something because like whoever's got deep pockets, they're getting it taken advantage of, right? Because their songs production is really intense. And the videos are like miniature movies. So you're going like, holy.
I have to get into that more. I have to check that out.
Yeah. That channel has got a lot of new bands. So and some of it, like some of it's a little pretentious after a while. Some of it, you and I have heard this style 1,000 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then sometimes you get, like I said, there's the sonic of the song, the way the song's sung. It's different, and sometimes there's the odd song, Kevin, that you hear, and you go, "Oh wow, you know what? Like that sounds like this song 20 years ago, but they're doing a whole new take on it, and they're writing a song that's formulated like 20 years ago, but the production, the way they're recording it, the way they sang it, you go, okay, I get it. It's not bad. It's a good song. It's a strong song. So I get it.
It'll give you ideas.
It does. It sparks your ideas. It does for me. And then I get on my little Apple computer and start going, right?
Well, when you're talking about singles and stuff when we were kids, I'd go to like swap meets and stuff and I'd go, how much for the whole box? And actually, what I used to do at Lougheed swap meet right near probably, I don't know, do you still live in East Van?
I do. I'm still in the hood.
Yeah, I love that area, but I mean, it's actually Burnaby just barely, but where that drive-in theater used to be on Lougheed when we were kids.
Yeah, but white spot.
And I would like offer people like $5 for a milk crate full of records.
Well, that's a good
then I'd walk down a bit further and I'd pull out all the good ones and I'd sit there without paying and sell records to people. So I was actually basically coming out with records and a few bucks in my pocket.
Smart move.
With the singles and the albums, I would go through fast because if I had to think whether it was a good song, then it wasn't like a great one. That magic, that just sort of goose pimples you feel when it's just, no matter what they did and how many times it's been done before, somehow they got into that magic place where this is not the same as other songs. And it was like a drug. I would just be, I'd go through 50 songs and probably more like 500 songs and once in a while. And some of those songs now, I still have that missed, for maybe business reasons or whatever, that I would stake whatever terrible reputation I have, that would be a hit if exposed properly,
Yeah.
But that feeling, that rush, that chill, that goosebump thing, again, it's primal, and it's more kind of where I'm finding I'm going towards now is like, is just trust your gut, And I mean, even in everything right now, especially in the world right now, and how many people will lie even for a living, how much you got to trust your gut in everything these days.
You do. And you know who's
I'm
another?
bringing that.
You know who's another good band? I don't know if you probably know them. Is I went and saw them live, and I became a big fan. Is Ghost?
Oh, you know what? Okay, weird you mention that, and I want to hear whatever you know because I know very little. There's one song by them, and sonically, I know my system really well, and when I heard their mix and their amount of mid and top, their overall
Yeah.
EQ, it was exactly where I wanted Al's record to be and everything. I've been actually making people listen to this one song going, don't push more mids, and everything's getting real toppy and midi these days.
Yes. Yes.
So I want at least their EQ curve on their final product, plus so much of their production values, they sound so good, and that's all I know, so anything you know, I'm curious to hear.
You know what? Their live stuff, them live too.
Yeah.
Shit, I'm telling you, Kevin, the guy singing is fucking never. And I know how to sing. Like you and I've, like I said, I took lessons with Ed for a long time. I know what I'm doing, and I fucking went. That guy, I told a couple people in my band, I says that guy is probably one of the best rock singers ever. I says, I says he makes Freddie Mercury look bad. I says this guy never sang flat or sharp in any the whole 2-hour show. I'm telling you, he was phenomenal. He knew what he was doing. He was in control, and yet he was just having a really good time. And the band was like the musicianship, Kevin, is just like wow. I mean, these guys are like fucking impeccable. There's like 8 people in that band, and but he's like Alice Cooper, but like fucking because of all the ghost, all the mythical stuff. But like he is like he's leagues above people. Like I like this guy. I know you hear him on a record and it sounds really good, but when you hear him live, he sounds just flawless. I mean, I'm sure he has bad nights. I'm not saying he doesn't, right? He's a human being. But as I saw him at that show, I was like, this guy is really fucking good. I haven't seen a singer that good live in a long time.
So I'm going to have to go deeper here because it's just this weird. It's funny how that's what people understand when you put music out. It might be the weirdest way where someone comes in that door to your, just for some odd little reason. Something about something you did brings them in, and then they unlock this whole huge. I've got this love affair with a band called Fountains of Wayne.
Oh yes, yeah, they're good too.
So we all heard Stacy's Mom, right? And I was just in a thrift store and I saw it, and I thought, I was becoming aware of Adam. I can't remember his last name though. That was the big writer in that band, and he was writing, like that thing you do for the Tom Hanks movie and stuff.
Yeah.
Adam, I think it was Adam Levine.
I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, do you know that he was one of the first deaths from COVID in New York?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
So I find this record, and I had it on my phone, I just transferred it over, and I just loved almost every song, and they're brand new, and I was having that experience I had as a kid when I got a new Beatles album or something, songs I'd never heard before, and just that whole sort of new love thing. And now I've gotten their entire catalog, and thank God they recorded probably 100 songs, and I'd say 50 are gems. So I'm just immersed in this Fountains of Wayne thing. The other thing I wanted to tell you though is, you're talking about, so you have a place to go where however they're presenting the format is interesting to you. We've got this super fan, wonderful human being guy out in Pittsburgh who is just a diehard Thor fan,
right on.
So incredible. So he's got this radio station. He's actually a criminal lawyer and a radio station guy, a DJ, and he does this show. And I heard of it forever, and I, said a few words to him. But one week I listened, and I also got to know him. So we started talking, and so he got real interested now. So right now he's playing. Last week he just sort of started our new single in the States to see what'll happen, and. So what that means is that at 5 o'clock, like today, every Thursday from 5 to 7:30, I tune into this Pittsburgh station and listen to 2.5 hours music because I actually really like it now. And he likes to play new stuff by old legacy artists.
Cool.
And so he's playing the new Angel album, which there on the same label as us. And it's pretty cool to hear them doing stuff. And he's got, new Alice Cooper, new whatever. And I mean, not just that, he's just playing all this cool stuff. And I was telling him it forces me from drifting away and almost just not even listening to music anymore. It's made me hear all this stuff that I didn't choose to hear for 2.5 hours every week. And I'm finding that's my little, fountain right now.
Yeah, that's good. Like you said, we need that. You need to find that inspiration and find out where things will take you, right?
Yeah. You just if you get all, I mean, you notice the great writers sort of get worse for whatever reason. I want to figure that out. I'm trying to go the other way and become a great writer, but guys like McCartney, that there's some magic that seems to drift off, and is it too many years in the business, or I don't know, but
I think probably it's funny you say that. I think those guys, what happens with those artists, the Stones and all those guys, I think they write good new material. I think it's probably stronger than some people's, right? They wouldn't be who they are. I just don't, I don't, sometimes the passion isn't there as much as it used to be. I could be wrong. You and I'd have to sit down with Paul and ask him that question.
Well, and even a harsher opinion too is that in the day, some of these artists, like some that I've worked with too, I won't name, but there's artists that I've worked with that when they were younger, they had business guys all around them, breathing down their necks and not letting them do anything. Wear this, sing this, play here, and then I see what they yearn for their freedom. Then they get their freedom unbridled, and it's like, okay, well, this is going to be awesome because all you've been doing since the 80s and 70s has been whining about not having freedom, and you realize that you need that. That's kind of how a lot of that stuff worked. It was just that outside influence, as much as it was coming from a bad place and money driven, that made the artists. It was a combination of the part that we hate and the part that we love that seemed to make better music than what we're getting now.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Well, Kev, I'm going to let you go. And you know what? I love talking to you. We're going to do this again because,
that was fun.
It was lots of fun. And take it easy during this weird time. And and keep busy. And I mean it. It was a pleasure talking to you. I miss talking to you actually. I know because you and I've had some really cool conversations. I know we've always had good talks. And I I loved playing with you too. That was always lots of fun, right? That was never a dull moment there.
Well, I was kind of insane then. Like, it's nice to talk to you as a relatively sane individual now. But,
you got that right. We were all kind of crazy at that point. All right, take care, and Kevin, and say hello to Al for me too.
I will. Okay, bye.
Bye. That was talking to Kevin Swain on the Art of Doing podcast. Very interesting dude. We went a whole hour. That is, we've got lots to say. There's lots to talk about. We both like music, and we have a lot of friends and people in the industry in common with. So, anyways, that's the Art of Doing podcast 2021, and we'll have more coming your way. All kinds of interesting people and guests along the way, all over this planet. Izzy Dakota Jones, signing off.